Hi there, it's Dak. I'm here talking about some of the things that we can expect to see with the new expansion. Now, we know that BioWare is focusing a lot on story, and with this, they're hoping to, it seems like, attract a new audience, moving the game away from endgame. But I'm not so sure this is a wise decision. See, the thing about story modes, and I should say story oriented players, is they consume content rapidly. And story content is very expensive to produce. I mean, you're talking about voiceovers, you're talking about cinematics and whatnot. And it's content that you don't necessarily want to replay over and over, especially when the content does not differ from class to class. You're essentially getting the same story, regardless if you play Imperial, Republic, Jedi class, non-Jedi class, or whatnot. And I'm not too sure if that's going to work out for them. I mean, they're promising to release content pretty regularly, periodically, but again, that's going to prove to be pretty expensive. And are players going to pay the money to stay subscribed to see this content, to see all these new chapters? Because without Endgame, you don't really have the draw to keep players in the game for the most part. And the funny thing is that when you go back to the launch of this game, what we can see is you had players that leveled from 1 to 50, they enjoyed the game, they liked the game, but then they unsubbed. And everybody was like, well, why did you unsub if you liked the game? And they were like, I beat it. And you see, that mentality is not what an MMO is. You don't beat MMOs for the most part. You clear content, you progress, you get gear, and then you move on to the next tier of content so that you can play through another experience. Now, if it comes down to just being a single player RPG, well, I don't know if this is the best platform for BioWare to be using, because I mean, they could simply make Knights of the Old Republic 4 or 5 or whatever they want to call it, make it an RPG, significantly lower the cost of developing the game, and go and sell that to that audience. But it seems like they're trying to have their cake and eat it too. They want to make that sale, or they want to make their revenue within this market, within the MMO market, and I'm not sure if that's going to hurt them or save them in the long run. Parts of me thinks it could be brilliant if they could somehow get a casual audience that's in the game, that's willing to pay for content regularly, but it also could massively backfire if we simply get a repeat of what we saw earlier with the launch of the game. Now, granted, there will be 9 operations that are going to keep players fairly busy for the most part. Now, I know a lot of raiders that have been in the game for a while, raiders that have done all this content, are not thrilled, they're not happy. And do I think it's a slight oversight that they didn't develop or put some funds into a new op? Yes. I mean, there should have been at least one new op, something there, so that the veteran players, the loyal customers that have been with the game since the launch, had something to really look forward to outside of story. Because believe it or not, there are some players that aren't really here for the story. Some are here for the end game, they're here for raiding and whatnot. Now, when you look at the metrics of the game, it has been said that only about 10% of the player base raids. And while this may be true, these numbers are somewhat skewed in the fact that that is a direct effect of what BioWare did to the game. The way they developed the content, the bugs that were in the raids, the slow release of new content and whatnot, kind of pushed raiders out of the game. Not to mention 3.0 being a complete disaster in terms of the average player getting into operations. You pretty much had to be a hardcore elite raider to get through hard mode. I mean, that was the only way you're getting through that, and you had to be fairly competent to get through story mode. And with that, a lot of players just simply did not want to do the content, so they leave the game. So then the devs go, instead of looking at themselves and going, oh, we designed content poorly. We designed content where you needed 8 freaking troopers to clear Revan or whatever. I mean, okay, technically you don't need 8 troopers, but when it first came out, that was pretty much the only way it was being done. And since then, it's been pretty much widely accepted that, yes, having that hold the line or hydraulics or whatever it's called on the M side is a huge advantage. And when you create mechanics like that where it favors certain classes, it naturally makes the game not so much fun, because then you're like, oh, we don't take sentinels, we don't take marauders, no, they're not coming on this raid. Guardians, we don't need guardians. And when you exclude classes, you exclude players. When you exclude players, you hurt the game, and you don't want to be excluding players. You don't want to be hurting the game. You want to be making it accessible. You want to be making it creative so that different types of compositions can get through the ops. But anyway, back to the point at hand. I feel that yes, BioWare directly contributed it to the current metrics that they were seeing of not having players in the game. So they go, oh, we don't have raiders in the game. Let's just make all story-oriented content. Now, while I can in some ways understand that decision, I just think they need to be careful, because they could use this as a platform, as a springboard to bring new players into the game. But they also need to be careful that if they do not develop endgame relatively soon, many players will be leaving the game again, and they will find themselves in the same situation they found themselves in when the game first launched. So endgame, I feel, is integral to any MMO. I don't care how story-centric your game is. If you are developing an MMO, you need endgame. It goes hand in hand. It's part of the package. It's part of what players expect. So they would do very well to include that. Well, these are some of my thoughts, my comments. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. Thank you very much.